Welcome to the podcast number 12, I think it is, and you're all welcome to follow this. I've got a few subjects today. I've been busy with a lot of things that I would like to mention, and I think that some of them will appeal to maybe pianists more than listeners even, but of course the question is, this is a podcast about the art of listening, but of course the art of listening is a very wide subject, and really a subject that we need to think of all of the potentials that it has. We could ask, how do we listen? Yeah, sure. How does everyone listen? I think everyone listens differently, luckily. And I think that we not only listen differently, but every day we listen differently, every hour maybe. What do we hear? And this is a question I have often thought about. For instance, in a musical performance, what do you really hear? I think it's rather limited. What does just imagine you have an audience and they hear a piece of music for the first time. And that's why I often say, not only the modern music is not only the music of now, it's also the music of the past. Everything was new. There was a moment that a Beethoven symphony was a new occasion. Beethoven string quartet, a new occasion. Same thing with all the works of Bach, they were new. And maybe in a style which was appreciated by the people a little more, but still not completely, because maybe when I remember the Grosse Fuge of Beethoven, when it was first performed, the critics were saying, I think they all played wrong notes. And not only that, the musicians themselves were really puzzled how to play this piece, how to play it. And I can imagine it. I've been doing it with the four-hand version, which is a wonderful piece to do. Been performing that, or preparing that actually, and hopefully for a performance. And it's a marvelous piece to play. But I can imagine how complicated that must have been the very first time they saw that score. I'm sure they had quite a lot of difficulty. I wonder how many rehearsals they actually had. I wonder if it was enough. I don't think so. I think it would have been almost sight reading. And can you imagine how that must have sounded? Well, okay, that being said, modern music is of all times. Everything that's been written is always new when you hear it for the first time. And I think that, what do you hear? Well, you hear a piece of music and you maybe just hear the first beginning of a melody, but you can't always follow it completely through because it's still unknown. Memory has a lot to do with appreciating music. I think our memories of what we just heard and repeating it, hearing it several times, that's the way we really remember things. And I think that doing that is something which we get really involved with. Then we can understand it, we begin to like it. That's of course why we begin to like music written before the 20th century, perhaps a little more than the music written after the 20th century. Maybe that's one of the reasons. But still, I think we can do a lot to training it. What I think is important in listening is to focusing on certain things in the beginning. Just focusing, for instance, I often told my students, when you're playing, focus on the long notes. Make sure they're long enough. Just listen to that. Make sure. You've got to start somewhere. What are you going to listen? How do you develop your piano playing? Well, we're getting into piano playing again. Of course we are, because it's connected. How do you listen to your piano playing? What are you going to listen for? That means you've got to listen to something that you focus on. You focus on, for instance, the bass line, or you focus on long notes, as I mentioned earlier. These things, just in the beginning, to get the feeling of that, and to appreciate what a long note means. Because a long note is usually put there because a composer wanted some sort of expression in that. And that's what I think is even inspiring. Then listening to the chords. Hey, how does the chord really sound? Do you really hear it? I mean, really, for instance, when playing, for instance, a piece of a bagatelle from Beethoven, let's just take something which is a little bit well known. And I take one of my favorites, I think it's this one. One of my favorite pieces. What a work, what a piece. And it's called a bagatelle. My oh my. A bagatelle? I think it's a little bit more than a bagatelle. Bigger bagatelle, I think is the only way I can describe it. What an expression is in that piece. Now this is just a spontaneous playing of it because I haven't been working on these pieces. But still, I think I can show you what I mean. A few things I did may be interesting to discuss because it's something that's always fascinated me. I've been, as I mentioned in one of the podcasts earlier, I'm very interested in legendary pianists. And I mean pianists like Joseph Hoffman and and Moisevich, for instance, wonderful, wonderful pianists. And we are lucky. There are actually some films of these pianists, not many, but a few films, and they're worth watching. You can find them on YouTube. So really write in YouTube, Joseph Hoffman and Benno Moisevich, and you'll find the films that I meant. The films of Hoffman are so fantastic. I can imagine Hoffman would probably be, you see him when he's playing, with very much circles of the arms, just relaxed, completely relaxed, and just makes use of gravity, just the falling of the finger, the falling of the hands. Amazing. Something I've often missed, and I've often asked pianists when they're playing, something which I will ask myself, how does your hand feel when you're playing? How does it actually feel? Do you have any feeling in it? Does it feel just easy, or does it feel tense, or whatever? And that may be something which helps us even to find a way to improve our playing without having a teacher even. If we can just feel our elbow, for instance, is it relaxed or is it tense? And for instance, when playing, I think, I'm not Hoffman, of course, absolutely. No one is, no one can be. He's just an amazing pianist. He's such a great figure. But a few things I've learned watching him, and one of them is that relaxation of the hand and the way he does this, easiness of the hand and the wrists, the circles he makes of the wrist. And he absolutely does something else which I love. For instance, you could see here a little bit of movement forwards, going to this important note. Just how we prepare the notes in our body. He once said, it's unverified, I couldn't find where this quote comes from. I read it many, I think years ago, I don't remember when, but I seem to recollect it completely. He said once, a lady came to him and asked, how do you play with such small hands? And he answered, but Madame, what makes you think that I use my hands when playing? He actually meant, of course, the body. I use everything. The fingers, hands, the body. So that's what I think is an inspiring thing from Hoffman. Interesting, when you look at this the wonderful films, there are two films by Moisevich. Actually, there are three, but there are two important films. The Tannhäuser Overture in the transcription by Franz Liszt. Wonderful, interesting, really wonderful, interesting recording. I believe made spontaneously, not prepared, as what I've understood. But also the same thing he did with the Rachmaninoff prelude. What do you see? Some things are the same as with Joseph Hoffman. He makes full use of the falling of the arm. And also these movements. What you also see in both of these pianists is the use of what I call the rebound. And this is one of the things I think is so important in piano playing, the rebounding of the key. For instance, letting the finger come back with the energy of the key, not the energy of the finger. The finger does what the key does. The key, of course, has got that springing rebound coming back to its position. So that brings the finger back. that was one of the reasons that Busoni said to his students, you should study non-legato. Not always, but of course non-legato, because it's actually through the non-legato you get to the legato. In fact, Chopin said something very similar. He said at one stage that he felt that it was important to first of all play staccato, then to play portato, and then to play legato. So you learn the legato playing through the staccato, but you just study the staccato to get the right feeling in the finger and the arm and the hand. And I think this is something which we can learn from all of these great pianists, certainly from these two great big giants, Hoffmann and Moisevich. They have got this very, very much in their playing. But it's in fact something which is existing in the playing of Busoni. Unfortunately, oh my gosh, and this is typical of the times we are still experiencing today, that sometimes the most important things are not registered. For instance, the playing of Busoni. My God, can you imagine what it would be like to be able to see how this man played? We've got, of course, I think it's 7 recordings. I've studied them backwards and frontwards and any way you can imagine to find everything I could find out when I was doing my own recordings of the complete works of Busoni. I wanted to know everything of Busoni, and perhaps that's influenced me more than anything in my life. But the thing is, it's so important how he got his sound. If you listen to the recording of Busoni playing the Prelude and Fugue in C major by Bach. Okay, of course everyone knows it's a very famous prelude, but of course the fugue. But the sound quality he gets, the way he plays that, that's just a miracle. If you listen to it, you hear the voices, all of the voices, so clearly. And don't forget, this has actually been played on a piano and played with probably pretty poor microphones. In fact, I don't think they had the microphones in those days. They had the big cylinder thing. What is it? I don't know the name. Doesn't matter. But you know probably better than I do. I think that that's what they used in those days. Unbelievable. What we can still hear. How did he do it? I would have loved to have seen that film of that process. He didn't like it, actually. In fact, he disliked all of his recordings. He hated recording. And he wrote to his wife at the time explaining how poor, how horrible it was to be in a studio making these recordings. And he didn't understand or didn't feel them as being a necessary part of his life. He hated it. He hated every process of it. And yet he's made those marvelous recordings. And also wonderful of Franz Liszt. He made a beautiful recording of a Rhapsody No. 6. Anyway, those things are there. But getting back to the subject of listening, well, I think this is, in some ways, for a pianist, got something to do with listening. Because what I find, I take this bagatelle. For instance, the way you do this, you go up and you've got to come down. To come down, you've got to go up, right? Well, I think that's probably physics. I don't know very much about physics, but that's one thing I do know. You've got to do both to do something, but coming down, if you come down the same way you went up, your sound is already in your mind before you come down. So you get the sound here of that first note. And the way you move your hand actually produces the melodic line. So your wrist and your hand becomes a physical embodiment of the theme. And that's important. That's really so important, because so often we hear just misses the timing. We just need to have the time. Just getting the timing. Yeah. Just very important to get all these things. Well, I've been talking about all these things. I hope a little bit of it's to be understood. And really, I enjoy talking about it, that's for sure. I enjoy doing it also. And I hope you enjoy listening. Thanks for listening.